Only Fools and White Horses tells the story of the first ever circumnavigation of the United Kingdom by an open canoe. I made this journey in the summer of 2017 with my nephew, Gould-Duff. We were in a 17.5-foot open canoe fitted with sails. Over 86 days we paddled and sailed this tiny craft over 2,000 miles on our way around the UK. Our voyage began in Loch Sinnar on the beautiful west coast of Scotland. But soon we were in the open sea, and our journey saw us battling through some of the most notorious stretches of water in the world, such as Cape Wrath and the Pentland Firth. I'm often asked what it was like to paddle a canoe around the UK. It was the most unbelievable adventure, but it wasn't easy. Long, hard and often brutal days. The weather and tides ruled. Big seas, tide races and merciless big ships. This was the norm. The decision to go out to sea in a canoe is serious, and the stress takes its toll and strains relationships. Davis and I were no exception. But the situations we paddled in were absolutely superb as we made our way along the most magical coastline. Spectacular cliffs, big skies, superb sunrises and sunsets, and beautiful beaches. So to answer the question, what it was like to paddle a canoe around the UK, I decided to write Only Fools and White Horses. It's a first-hand and honest account of two ordinary people against the odds. It's a story as much about people and places as it is canoeing.
Davis, that's the last boat I was captain of.
Colin!
Hello.
You made it.
Yes.
You paddled all the way around the UK.
Yes. Yeah.
How many days? How long was that?
Yeah, 86 days. 2000. Kevin, before we start, do I need to pour a glass of whiskey?
Oh, yes. I've been doing too many of them.
Can you see that? I have a really posh glass. Look at that.
Well, there we go.
Cut glass crystal was that? So.
Woo! Now this is pretty sad, but look at that. Oh my lord!
It's so I'm almost teetotal. So if I fall off my chair, just at the smell of it.
Well, I'm not going to have much because it's late for you, but it's early for me here.
It's not. It's still pretty early. It's 4 o'clock.
Oh no, that's good.
It's all right.
What are you having, Colin?
Oh, this is a Jura.
Oh, nice.
That means nothing to me, but it's a single malt apparently.
Yes, and this is a blend. So
and
yours
it's called
is far better.
It's what? Sorry.
Yours is far better.
Well, I don't know. It wouldn't make any difference to me. I could drink paraffin. I wouldn't know the difference. But it says Journey on it, so I thought that'd be nice.
It's a little smooth. It's not as peaty.
Really?
Yeah.
It says something about fruit in here.
Yes. I don't think it's fruity.
Well, there you go.
It is a fruity whiskey. There you go. Cheers.
Oh,
I got the shakes. Oh my lord. All right. I mean, doing too many of these. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Is this pandemic over soon?
I hope so.
Oh. All right. So you paddled around the UK.
Yes.
86 days. How many kilometers was that, or miles? I guess for you.
2,064 miles.
Okay.
But we did take some. We took a few shortcuts around the coast. Otherwise, it'd have been a bit longer.
Really?
Big crossings to make it a bit quicker. Yeah.
Oh, okay. 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 I got so many questions for you. I just finished reading this.
Ah, yes.
All right. Great book.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got so many questions. Why? Why did you do this?
Well, I finished work in 2017, and I had time on my hands. I like adventures. I like to do big things. Big testing, physical endurance events, and that sort of stuff. So at that time, I'd got into canoeing, and it had never been done. And I thought, well, if no one's done it, I think I'll give it a blast. And
okay, step back here. What do you mean? Like, I knew you were a climber. Well, first of all, you were a police officer for like over 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you retired from?
Yes.
Okay, so because I remember meeting you at the Whales Symposium, and I
Yeah.
got to say, in fact, I got you on camera, and you were all excited about telling me about this trip.
Okay, so you're retiring soon, and you have a plan of paddling around
the UK.
Yeah. Why?
Because it's not been done, and why not? So yeah, that's why. It's a challenge. It's something to do. It will keep me out of trouble, or it will get me into trouble. Yeah.
And I walked away thinking, he's not going to make it.
I think most people thought that.
Well, even you did, because like you weren't a paddler. Like you paddled, but climbing was your passion.
Yeah.
And your
That's
skill
right.
set, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, hey, I thought, I'll just paddle around the UK.
Yeah. But it can't be that hard, can it?
And not only did you do that, you also convinced your nephew to go with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I could have done it on my own, or I could have tried to do it on my own, but I always thought it's an adventure I'd like to share with somebody. I think the safety margins are always better when you're actually with somebody. And my first choice it was Katrina, my wife. But Katrina didn't want to do it. She's a better paddler than I am, but we have 2 dogs and she couldn't tear herself away from them, so she wasn't up for it. But Davis, he's half my age, in fact he's living in Vancouver now.
Oh, great.
Yeah, he's out there.
Fantastic. He's a climber too, right?
Yeah, so at an early age I introduced him to mountaineering and climbing, and we did a lot of climbs together, and yeah, he's very fit and he's a strong lad, and our relationship had been tested to quite a degree. We'd spent 9 days on El Capitan together, climbing a route called Muir Wall, and that was really quite difficult and stressful, and it tested us. So Davis to me was the obvious person to invite on the trip. The only thing is Davis had never paddled a canoe, and he'd only been in a canoe on 12 separate occasions by the time we actually left.
Okay. I remember reading this part in this book. Like,
Yeah.
you hadn't canoed much, and he had never canoed, and you decided to go around UK, which nobody has ever done in an open canoe.
Yeah, that's right.
For 86 days. For how many kilometers or miles again?
It's 2,064.
Okay, and so with limited paddling experience.
Yeah.
So would you say that trip, obviously you did well because you made it. Was this more of a mental trip than physical trip?
Yeah, it was definitely mental. It was really stressful, Yeah, these were big long days. They were. So we have 2 tides a day, and we would try and get on 2 of those tides where the tidal current would be in our favour, and so we would use the tide all the time. So physically, we'd get the conditions working for us, but it was hard. We were paddling all the time. We used sails on the canoe, and so we would be paddling and sailing for up to sometimes up to 12 hours a day. But then we would wait for the next tide, and then we'd catch the next tide.
Morning, it's 5 o'clock. We've just left Sunderland, and the wind's against us and it's raining. Other than that, we're having a good time. So we're hoping to get to Middlesbrough, about 24 miles away. We should be able to do it, shouldn't be a problem, I don't think. And then we'll rest up and see what the weather's like for the second tide. The problem is the winds, they're forecast to be quite high. So yeah, just enjoy the the weather.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so I don't know anything about tides where I live, right? So yeah, you would have to wait it out, or
Yeah. So what happens is that you have the tidal streams. The tidal streams are currents that flow offshore around the UK. And if you catch a tidal stream, it's like being on a river, really. Sometimes it will give you quite a bit of assistance, sometimes hardly anything. But it's really important that you get that tidal stream in your favour. And so for 6 hours, generally the tide will be in your favour. And then for the following 6 hours, it will be against you. So that's when you pull over to the shore. And you'd wait for 6 hours, and then you'd catch the next tide for the following 6 hours on that tidal stream. And so it was really important we caught those. But invariably, when we were paddling, we would end up an hour or so battling against the tide. We would get it slightly wrong, where there was nowhere to land or something. So that would be quite hard. Yeah.
well, who taught you all this? Like, obviously, you just didn't go off into the tides and just.
No. Well, I'd love to tell you. I would love to be able to say that I was, I'm a salty sea dog, but no, I've lived landlocked in the UK for most of my life. I just knew from reading books. I'd read about kayakers that have paddled around. I'd done a bit of sailing. I knew these were sort of basic things. I knew, and I'd learned from experience. I live in Scotland now, and I paddled. Most of my paddling's done in a coastal environment, and I know that if you want to get somewhere, then you try and make conditions as much as you can in your favour, and so you just end up going with the tides. You make sure those tidal streams are in your favour. I mean, sometimes it doesn't make that much difference. You might have half a knot against you, but if you've got a 3 knot tide against you, then you'll really struggle. It'll be like it's like trying to paddle upstream. You won't get anywhere. And it's such a big journey. You want everything in your favour, don't you? You want to make ground, and you want to keep the momentum going. So.
So why the open canoe then? Why not a kayak? Or why not even a deck on the canoe?
Canoes are brilliant, aren't they? They're just, they're just the most simple, beautiful craft that you can get. That you can put a load of kit in it. You can take it where you can't take most other boats. They can be very simple to paddle, and yet they can be really complex. You get some really clever people in a canoe that can do all sorts with it, and yet at the same time, it can be a really, really basic workhorse. And it's just great. And no one's ever taken one around the UK. But to be honest, that's all I paddle. I've just been out in the water now, and I just paddle a canoe. I love them. They're just simplicity and functionality. They're brilliant.
Well, when you say that nobody's ever done it, maybe there's a reason. Did anybody sort of second guess your trip before you went, or?
What do you mean by that?
Did anybody sort of say, "Well, why are you doing this? It's very dangerous." Like there's.
Oh yeah. Well, there seems to have been a culture of that canoes aren't really built for the sea. I came into canoeing late. I bought my first canoe in 2011, and I'd spent a whole decades before that climbing mountains, and so I came to a canoe, and I wasn't part of any culture. I didn't have any of that in me. I just looked at it and thought, well, if a kayak can go around one of these things with a bigger, with a bigger width, and they look more stable, surely one of these can go around the UK, and I thought so. It just seems like the perfect craft. We didn't have decks on it. We had a small spray deck on the front, and we had a small spray deck across the middle where we had all our equipment and camping gear. But the main bits where we sat were they were open.
Okay, so I'm guessing you brought a baler then.
We did so much bailing on this trip. We took in so much water, and we went through some big seas. You've seen some of the video and stuff, but we did so much bailing that I started to wear a hole in the bottom of the canoe Yeah, it was really bad. I thought, I thought, if I carry on like this, I had to do some emergency repairs. Do you have Keel Easy tape where you are?
Duct tape, yeah.
No, not duct tape. It's like a thick tape that you would stick on, and then you weld it to the. Yeah, you heat weld it onto the.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I had to do a pretty major repair on the bottom of the canoe because I'd been scooping out water so much, basically for hours and hours, just paddling, scoop, scoop, paddle, scoop, and it just became monotonous. Yeah, it was. Yeah, some of the situations were pretty crazy, really. So going back to your point about people not wanting to paddle around the UK in a canoe, perhaps they got it right. Perhaps it's not the vessel.
Well, who inspired you to get out in the wilderness in the first place? Like, obviously you liked the outdoors, climbing.
Yeah.
Was there any particular person that inspired you, or?
Yeah, so when I was at school, my school, I was very, very lucky because my school had an outdoor pursuits group, and I joined the group, and there was some teachers there who were my role models. They were really, really, really important to me. In that they showed me that there was a whole new world out there, which just seemed so exciting and really good. So one of those guys was a guy called Bill Taylor. There was another guy called Malcolm Gilby, and they were inspirational. So Bill Taylor, he'd worked in the British Antarctic Survey. He'd done some really big kayak trips. He'd been a mountaineer. Malcolm Gilby the same. He'd done all sorts of stuff. And those guys literally changed my life. And I'm sure you do with your young people that you work with. And I was introduced to this world of nature and adventure and making decisions for yourself, getting away from the rat race, and those guys. The club was predominantly a kayaking club, but I didn't actually think I was particularly good at it, to be honest. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole crack, but I wasn't what I would say a good kayaker. So one day we were introduced to climbing, and again, I wasn't particularly good at climbing, but I just loved it, and it blew me away. And these were on small cliffs, tiny cliffs, 30, 40 foot high sandstone cliffs in this really rolling countryside, of the Kent countryside, and it was just.
Oh, wait a minute! A bird just hit the window.
Oh no!
Yes, I'm back. Oh no!
Is it all right?
Yep, it got up.
Yeah. So, do you need to do first aid?
I was about to. That's my second one in 2 days. There was babies nested just off the tree up by my window, and they're flying the wrong way.
I know.
Sorry, Colin.
No, that's all right.
There's death and mayhem happening.
And it's got a bent beak.
It was a little fuzzy when it got up, but we're good. Oh, sorry. What were we talking about? The whole idea of...
I was chirping on about some inspiration.
Mm.
So, where was I? You'll have to rewind this bit. I was wittering on about something. I don't know. Where's that whiskey?
Well, your teachers.
Oh yeah. So climbing. So I got into climbing, and it just blew me away. I was obsessed by it. And I climbed for many years, and I joined the police, and I spent all my spare time away from being a cop, climbing. That was my escape, and I did that for years. But then part of my love of climbing is I wanted to do a lot of routes in Scotland, but it was quite a long trek from where I lived in England. So I bought a house in Scotland, where I am now. And it's right next to Loch Sunart, which is just beautiful. Really beautiful place on the west coast of Scotland, mountainous, breathtaking scenery. Not many people about, probably similar to where you are. on a smaller scale. And so the only problem is the weather's not always that good for climbing. So myself and Katrina, we decided to buy a canoe. I don't know why I decided on a canoe, but I think we were going to go fishing on the loch. But the minute we got a canoe, it just one thing led to another, and we started paddling on the loch. And I thought, can you sail one of these? Can you sail? And learned to sail a canoe, and then we did some quite big trips, and it just developed, and it was a bit of a snowball thing, really. And then the question, one thing I didn't mention is that one of these role models at school, this guy called Bill Taylor, him and two others were the first people to circumnavigate the UK and Ireland in sea kayaks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that was in 1986, I think it was. And so I always had that as a bit of a reference point. And I thought, well, if Bill Taylor can do it in a kayak, then, surely somebody could have done it in a canoe. They hadn't. So that was it. And it's just since getting that first canoe in 2011, it's just been a love affair. I don't climb anymore. Don't climb mountains. I just paddle canoes. The thing is, you get into something new, a different adventure, a different pastime, and you're on a different learning curve, and it's exciting and it's all new. And I say, I've been going around mountains all my life, but you're looking down and lovely views and things. Now I see it from a different perspective, and I get close up with nature, much closer to nature than I did before, and it's just great. I just love it.
That's fantastic. That's great.
Yeah,
Scotland's amazing for paddling. Yeah, for sure. Does your nephew still paddle?
He's paddled in Canada now. I know that because he has to, didn't he? It's the home of paddling.
Well, as soon as you move here to Canada, it's actually part of the rules. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. Anyway, he's fulfilled that obligation. I told him he must when he comes across. So does he still paddle? Occasionally, I would say, but he was never a paddler. Davis was a very, he's competed in triathlons. He's very fit. He did is it the Yukon marathon, across the frozen lakes and stuff.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
He competed in that. He's a mountaineer. He's climbed in the Alps a lot, and European Alps, and he's done a lot of stuff. But I wouldn't say he's a paddler. I can imagine in a few years' time he may come back to it.
Yeah.
So, and I hope he does, and he'll be very good.
Well, I noticed that Ray did the intro for the book.
Yeah, he did.
And and he did say something about your nephew saying, gosh, he never paddled before. I was quite worried about them not being able to do this. But he also said that because he was a climber, he had that mental fortitude to get. Yeah. Now, what did Ray say to you when you just came up with this idea? Did you walk up to Ray, this is Ray, and say, hey, by the way, I'm going to paddle around an open canoe? Because he had done a lot of open water travels as well, so he's experienced with that. Did he sort of look at you with disbelief, or? Yeah,
so the first thing you do when you're looking at doing a big trip you research it, don't you? And you try and find out what's been done, and nobody had done it that I could see. The closest I could come to it was Ray Goodwin with his trips around Wales, the coast of Wales, and he'd gone across the Irish Sea, that sort of thing. So he was the only person really that came anywhere near doing what I'd wanted to do, and he's held in such high esteem within the canoeing world.
And we're going to have a little go at paddling around the island of Mull. Are you feeling manly, Colin? Yes.
Very manly.
epic.
Cheers, Ray. Brilliant. Brilliant trip.
So, yeah, he was the guy to talk to. So we booked on a canoeing course, myself and Katrina. It's called I think it's still a 3-star canoeing course, which is basically showing basic competence in a canoe. And it's over 2 days. So we booked on it with Ray. And on the first day, we were in a cafe, and I mentioned it to Ray. I said to Ray, and by the way, I'm looking at paddling a canoe around the UK. And at that point, he's drinking his cappuccino, and he like spluttered into his coffee. It's like, and he sat back in his chair, and he's like, "Really, really?" No, but do you know what? He was very professional. I have to say, he was very professional. He kept his thoughts to himself. He asked some quite probing questions, which what's your background, what's your experience, and I think once he got to know me a bit, and he knew some of the things I've done in the mountains and some of my history of events, I think he started to think, well, there's a chance. I think to start with, he gave me. To start with, it was a 50-50 chance of success, which I didn't think was bad. I thought that was all right. The thing is, if it had been a guaranteed success, you wouldn't bother, would you?
Well, that's true. That's true. Was there any times on the trip where you or your nephew just sort of said, "That's it, we got to go back home"?
No, never. No. We had a lot of hard moments, and we had, it was tough, but we were on a mission, and neither of us were for turning at any point. We had some moments when we were just shattered, absolutely wrecked, but never, no, not on the agenda.
Did you ever capsize?
Yeah, of course we did.
So we're about 5 miles away from Strathay Point, and wind's blowing about a force 3 to 4 at the moment, but the swell has been really big, some really big waves. We've been swamped once, and it's really not easy conditions at the moment, but we're doing all right. We're making good progress. We're going to be at the point, which I'll just show you, which is just over there. We're going to be there, I'm hoping, within the next hour or so, and we may have a tide race getting around that, we'll see.
It wouldn't be a good adventure without a few capsizes, would it?
A few, more than one.
Well, yes. So when you're paddling at sea, it's okay, you're going okay, aren't you? But then you've got to land on a beach. And are you trying to land a canoe on a beach where there's big waves coming in, and you're getting big surf waves, and trying to keep control of a 17.5-foot canoe as you get on a big surf wave, it's impossible, So, yeah, we had a few crashes on waves, but in fairness, we knew what we were going to do. We knew, so we battened everything down. We made sure everything was away. Our sails were down. Everything was, and we would just, we just close our eyes and paddle, just get washed into the beach. So yeah, that was the cause of a couple of capsizes. We had one off Dartmouth. It just blew up, really windy. This is on the south coast of England. That was really quite. It just got so windy, gusty, big waves, and it all became too much. Boat filling with water, and the next thing we were blown over, and it was just, and you're in the middle of the sea. But do you know what? Capsizing at sea is a great place to capsize, because I know it sounds crazy. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? If you're away from rocks and there's no ships about, well, you just sort yourself out, and you just, as long as you don't panic and you just think, right, well, let's get the canoe back up, and then let's get back in it, and then sort everything out, bail all the water out, and you just get going again. And it was as simple as that. and we were as relaxed about capsizing at sea as that. The worst places to capsize are when there's when you're near rocks and shore. You know, that's when things can go badly wrong. We were at Rattray Head. Rattray Head was really bad. That's on the northeast tip of Scotland, and we were launching on this occasion, and it just went completely wrong. So we had all the surf coming in, breaking waves and things, and I decided that we could paddle the canoe out and then start sailing straight away. So we left the masts up, and Davis, in his wisdom, suggested we shouldn't, and I sort of used my wisdom and age to say that it would be fine, and we started to go out into this oncoming surf, and we thought we had a way through. I jumped in the canoe at the back. Davis wasn't in it. I dropped my paddle, and it just went. Anyway, we got hit by. Well, I was in the boat, and a big wave hit us. And honest, I still have this photograph in my mind. I close my eyes. I see it now, of the canoe up here with me like this, looking at the canoe with the wave coming over. It was horrendous. Honestly, it was just like really bad. So we got hit by this, or I got hit by this wave, and it was just smashed, rolled over, you know, with the masts up, which isn't good, you know. So you've got all that leverage on a mast onto the bottom of the boat, and you're thinking this is just going to get smashed to pieces. But fortunately, it was just, there was some damage to the boat. But what was really good about that was myself and Davis, we were like drowned rats. We had this boat, we got all the noise of the waves and stuff, and we've got the boat that's damaged. We repaired that damage within an hour, less than an hour, I'd say, and we got out our multi-tools. We got a few bits of we got some epoxy putty, which we repaired bits with. We cut down other bits of broken mast, and we repaired it really quickly, and then we were off again, straight again. And we didn't miss a tide that day, and it was great. So that was the only consolation I drew from my bad decision making, was that we actually recovered from it really well.
Yeah. Did you wild camp along the way? Did you tent it, or?
Yeah. So the plan was one of we were going to go for 5 days, and then I'd meet Katrina, who would then resupply us for another 5 days, and then basically we'd meet her every 5 days for a resupply. Didn't always work, I have to say. It's dead easy wild camping in Scotland, and certain parts of England are okay, and Wales. You get down onto the south coast of England, it's really quite hard. And so we ended up meeting Katrina probably more than 5 days, you know. Oh, God, certainly, you know. We spent more time in the van than I would have liked to with Katrina.
Okay, yeah, I wondered about that, because how does it work in Scotland? It's free reign, right? You can actually wild camp anywhere. Yeah,
you can do, and you know, it was so easy in Scotland that you look for somewhere that looks like you can camp, and you try and get to it, and then that's where you're going to spend your next few hours of recovery before you carry on. In England, it's not quite the same. Quite often, the places you want to stop are towns, and where can you? You know, you end up in the middle of a town. You can't. You could actually bivvy, I suppose, next to the boat, but it's not that easy. So perhaps if I was to do it again, that might be one of my regrets. Is probably spending. We had the comfort blanket of Katrina, and if I was to do it again, perhaps I would try and take that away.
Okay.
But then I don't know if I'd have done it without Katrina. In fact, you know, well, we'd have done it, I should say.
Yeah. Well, yeah, 86 days. Yeah. Did you meet any interesting people along the way?
Yeah. I mean, that's just one of the brilliant things, isn't it? It's just meeting interesting people. You know, the guy in Thurso, who at the sailing club there, he was fantastic. He had designed a land speed yacht, and he was an engineer, and he'd worked in a nuclear power. He was a nuclear scientist and that sort of thing. And really, yeah, he was an interesting guy, but a very keen sailor. And it was the guy that gave me this. That's from the trip. He was, just really interesting, great people, you know, so friendly. People were so friendly.
And did you become sort of, that's the guy that's paddling around the UK?
Not really, no. No, I think a few people did, but no, not really. I think I was a bit of we were a bit of an oddity.
Who knew?
Yeah, it's just a bit odd, isn't it? You know.
I don't know. I don't find it odd, but I do know that a lot of people, you know, all of a sudden looking out into the ocean, seeing a canoe out there, and finding out you're doing it for 86 days around the UK. Yeah, I could say a lot of locals would be like, "What the?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, when we went through the Pentland Firth, which is a big tide race, and we went through on a day when there was the swell was so high that they closed the harbour at Wick, which is where we were heading to. So basically, if you imagine the top of Scotland, you've got the Orkney Islands, and so between the top of the actual mainland and the Orkney Islands, you've got this firth, and it's called the Pentland Firth. And there's a big tide race that runs through there, probably one of the most serious there is anywhere. And so we went through the Pentland Firth on a day when just round the corner the harbour was shut, and that's at Wick Harbour. And the Coast Guard, we told the Coast Guard about it, and that they were in disbelief. They couldn't believe that we were going through, and I felt I was like a naughty schoolboy. I had to report in every hour. And when we landed at Wick, fortunately they'd just opened harbour, so we pulled in. We were met by a few sailors, and they just couldn't believe it. And the people were coming up and saying, "Are you the guys that have just gone through the Pentland Firth?" And you know, we were listening to it on the radio. We couldn't, you know, they couldn't believe that we'd just gone through it. I don't think I could either, to be honest. But you know, it's en route, and you had to get through it.
When you completed it, was there a huge fanfare? Were there like massive crowds, or?
No. There was a few people. Where I live now, it's a tiny village, and it wasn't clear when we were actually going to get home. So there was just a few friends and family that turned out, and it was really nice. You know, there was no elation with it either. There was no, yeah, we've done it. None of that. It was just, right, job done. Let's get back to normal now. It was quite subdued, I have to say.
Wow.
Sounds odd.
But so what made you write it? Because this is your first book, right?
Oh yeah.
And so why did you decide to write it? And actually, why the title, Only Fools and White Horses?
Well, there's a comedy program, a really good comedy program called Only Fools and Horses in the UK. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah. I was wondering if you had something to do with it. Okay.
Yeah. And it just seemed apt. It seemed, you know, there's a link to white horses, and then it could be considered a bit of a foolish undertaking. I wouldn't say it was. I think it just needs, if anyone's going to do it, then it just needs a clear idea of what you're going up against, and just, you know, if I can do it, anyone can do it. It just needs but any fool can do it, hence the title. So.
Oh man, and so you put this book out in May.
Yeah.
You did the trip in 2017.
Yeah.
Did you know you were going to write a book while you're doing the trip, or was it something you thought of afterwards?
Something I thought about, and I think books are important. I was always worried that we would do this trip, myself and Davis, and it would just be forgotten about, and it would just be part of canoeing legend. And I just thought it would be a good thing just to document it. I'm quite happy that the book is there now. If it sells, great. That, you know, that's a bonus. But to me, it's just the written record of an adventure that myself and Davis had, and it's it's there. It's a legacy. That's what it's about. So, yeah. Did I answer your question there?
You did. There's a few clips of you, like film clips of you doing it, but you didn't film it as a documentary. You wrote about it, wrote a book about it. But
yeah,
I mean, nowadays, doesn't everybody do a film for YouTube? Why did you not do that?
Yeah, well, we started off with the idea of taking loads of footage and perhaps putting together a small movie at the end of it. That was an idea. And I found, and Davis was the same, that once you got into the adventure of this and the graft, it's really hard work. Just filming, it's really tough. You're tired. You just don't want to get the camera out. You'll know this. You just you're planning for the next day. You're cooking the food. And then before you know it, filming's a chore. And so all our good intentions fell to the wayside. I'm saying that I did take loads of footage. I've got tons of clips, but not enough for a movie or anything to make a film of it, a good film. But anyway, there's enough. There's a record of the trip.
I thought it'd be really good to introduce you to the facilities that we've got on board our canoe. Probably the most important facility we have is the toilet. This is the toilet, also known as a bailing bucket. I've just had a pee. It's blown about force 3, force 4. A few breaking waves, didn't stop sailing, and I reckon about 70% was on target, which isn't bad.
What did you take for safety then? Did you have any device like we have here, like a spot or whatever? Or
yeah, so we had Spot Messenger.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, we had Spot Messenger and what else did I have? Usual stuff. VHF radio for the Coast Guard, and that was it.
With that teacher that inspired you years ago, is he still around? Does he know about the trip?
Yeah. So we met him on the route.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'm in touch with him now, and tremendous guy. Yeah. So you talk about, this is a man that paddled everywhere, climbed mountains. He ran adventure centres for young people. He then is looking for something else to do. He ends up being a horse riding. That's the wrong term. A
jockey?
No. He used to take people out on horseback in the Wild West, across the plains in America, as a guide. I know. And so, as you do, that's all adventure, isn't it? That's somebody that just wants to live out there and so doing massive great treks on horseback across America. And you've got this Englishman leading these Americans across. And his stories of doing that. Oh, and he was a canoe guide in Canada. The guy's done it. So, but that's the sort of, I find it just, it's all seeking the adventure. What's around the corner? Yeah.
Well, then, what's next for you then?
Well, myself and my wife, we tried to get across the North Sea, and I'd like to finish that. So that was an interesting trip, and so the North Sea.
Not like you, no.
No.
I know of it, yes.
Okay, so if you look at the east coast of England, and you look eastwards, you'll have Norway, Denmark, and Holland, and lower down you have France, and the stretch of water between it is the North Sea. And myself and Katrina tried a 200-mile crossing from from Cleethorpes in England, and we were going across to Den Helder in Norway. No, sorry, not in Norway, in Holland. And it sort of it was an interesting trip, Kevin.
I was so Colin.
Honestly, it was that. Now that was an adventure, but that was an adventure that you know, they define an adventure. It's one of those things that there is no definite outcome, you know. And this one went slightly wrong. We got 60 miles into it, and things weren't going in our favour. We ended up in the North Sea is a shallow sea. Shallow water generally means big waves. We made a mistake because we hurried it. We went on a spring tide, and there was some big waves going out near a wind farm. It was dark, and so we're in the middle of the North Sea, alone, in the dark, big waves crashing onto these big wind farm stanchions, or, you know, windmills, I should say. And we decided to call it a day. We thought that we haven't got this right. So we're 60 miles out. We have to then get back, and so we paddled through the night, and in the end we did 100 miles, and we survived to try again. But that was a case of it got, honestly, it got really bad, actually.
Is that like I know when I'm doing a really bad portage, the only thing that gets me across is I knew that I had done one that was worse before.
Yeah.
So so are you finding it easier now to do this because you've done all the other?
Well, this was uncharted territory for me. So the longest crossing I'd done was around about 55 miles. And that was with Davis. This was 200-mile crossing across open sea, across a really quite serious stretch of water. So this was new territory. This was like pushing the boundaries for anything I've done before, and Katrina for that matter. So 60 miles into it with another, and then we had to self-rescue effectively. And that's something that's really important to me. I would be devastated if I had to call upon anyone to try and get me out of trouble. So we had to paddle out, and that was quite difficult. But then we paddle out I had no sleep for days, literally for a long time, no sleep. We landed at a place called Cromer in Norfolk. That was miles away from where we started, but it was the closest that we could get to. So I then had to do a 7-hour train journey back to the van so I could then come and pick the canoe up. So with no sleep for however long myself and Katrina had been on the water, and a 100-mile paddle, I have this 7-hour train journey to the van, and I left Katrina with the boat. So we'd left the boat on a slipway next to a sea wall. We didn't know that an oncoming swell comes up to this sea wall and creates a real spectacle. As the waves just smash into the sea wall, and they said send big plumes of water into the air. So I left Katrina with the boat in a perilous position on this slipway, right at the foot of this sea wall, as big waves are coming in. So Katrina's panicking, having to deal with this as I am on this train journey, and the boat was nearly swept away, but fortunately it didn't happen. And then I come back, I've had no sleep, and Katrina's had this real terrible ordeal. The boat's been, it wasn't swept away, but it very, very nearly was. It was a near miss. So we load the boat onto the van, and we then decide to go to Katrina's parents that don't live too far away in Lincolnshire. So as we're driving, I've got this pain in my calf, and I'm thinking, I've been sat in a canoe we've actually been at sea for 29 hours. I've been sat in a canoe for 29 hours and I've got this pain in my calf. And I was a bit worried then. I'm thinking, And I'm a bit of a hypochondriac, you know, so I'm thinking, I've got DVT. So I then Google this, and yeah, I might have got DVT. So I then ring the NHS, the hospital, and seek their advice. And they said to me, they said basically, it says, "Is that Colin Skeath?" And I said, "Yeah." They said, "Well, you need to man up, don't you? It'll be fine." No, seriously, they said, "No, you'll be fine. Don't worry about it." So I thought that was the end of it. So I stayed awake all that day, absolutely shattered. And then at 8 o'clock at night, I get a phone call from the hospital saying, "We've reviewed your case and you need to come into the accident and emergency ASAP." So I then go to the local hospital in Lincolnshire to spend a Saturday night with Lincolnshire's finest, which I'm sure you can imagine, for another 7 hours waiting as this gets investigated, this pain in my leg, only to be told that actually it's there's nothing wrong with you. You've pulled a muscle or something. So I'd had no sleep for days. Honestly, it was terrible. So anyway, please edit all of this. Don't inflict all of this on your viewers. But anyway, so I'd like to go back and give that another shot. That would be a good thing to do.
Cheers to that. Oh my Lord! Wow.
So we went out to St Kilda, which is an island in the middle of the Atlantic. That was a really good adventure. That was only a 40-mile journey, but we went both ways, and that was just stunning. That's if you ever check out St Kilda on a map, and that was really quite exposed, because that's subject to all the swell from the Atlantic, and it's very remote, and it's got a fantastic history, and it's a beautiful place. But we were paddling out there, and we both myself and Katrina were seasick, and it wasn't easy. But if it's any consolation, Kevin, I've been out today and I've done 4 miles in my canoe today.
There you go.
That was lovely. That was really good fun. Perhaps I'll stick with that.
I can just see people now. Colin was the only person that kept Kevin speechless through the entire interview. Oh man! Well, cheers to you.
Yes, thank you.
And cheers to the book. Really good book. And,
thank you very much, Kevin.
Actually, and I got to say, it's a perfect size to take on a canoe trip.
Yeah. Or prop up a wobbly table.
Yes, that's true. Yes. No, it was good. Really good read. And are you going to write another one after all these other adventures and misadventures you've done? Or?
I don't know. We'll say perhaps. Maybe.
Like, you're retired, so.
Yeah, but just on a different direction, Kevin. Not retired.
Cheers to that.
Cheers now.
All right.